In a world where legends rise and fall with every punch, where the roar of the crowd fades, but the stories live on. This is where those stories are told. This is Talkin' Boxing with Billy C. From the blood, the sweat, and the glory, to the controversies, comebacks, and knockouts, we go behind the ring, no fluff, no hype, and definitely no BS. Just the truth behind the fight game. And we've been doing it for over 2 decades. A podcast pioneer, now a Hall of Famer.
Great. What's that ego gonna be like?
And next, the comeback kid.
Wait, isn't he like 90 or something?
Shut up, he'll hear you. The reigning, defending, undisputed, heavyweight champion of boxing broadcasting. It's Talkin' Boxing with Billy C. And it's on now.
And we're coming to you live from the Billy C Studios in Lake George, New York. I'm Bill Calogero, and it's time for the Billy C Show. Good morning, good day, good evening, whenever you watch it, whenever you're listening. I hope you're doing okay today. Today's show is being brought to us, not even in part. It's being brought to us all the way by my book, Tom Molyneux, From Bondage to Baddest Man on the Planet. It's available right now where all good books are sold. You can get a copy of this book right now by going to Amazon and just search that. Or you can check out BillyCBoxing.com. And there should be a special on there. Do me a favor. If it's not a special, drop me an email, Billy@TalkinBoxing, TalkinBoxing. And I will try and get it back for you. Give a shout out to the chat room. Love it's in there. And my man, Orlando, I'm going to be seeing you soon, my man, at the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame, first weekend in June. Be there. You won't regret it. Listen, we got a busy show scheduled for you today. I'm going to be breaking down and predicting the huge cruiserweight world title fight between the world champion Gilberto Ramirez and the world light heavyweight champion who's moving up to challenge Zurdo, David the Monster Benavidez, and also the big fight that's happening in Tokyo between Unified World Super Bantamweight champion Naoya Inoue, and he's taking on the number one ranked contender in Junto Nakatani. Both of these fights have the potential, either both of them being tied or one of them being fights of the year. I'm really looking forward to both of them. I'm also going to be talking about the latest boxing news, including an update on Anthony Joshua, Zuffa Boxing, more Floyd Mayweather Jr. money problems. You know that there's a tear welling up in my eye right now as I speak, and much more. This week's guest, well, a new book is out, Michael Jinx Spinks, and we're going to have the author of that book, Jack Hirsch, and he will be coming on and telling us about the book and some inside stuff all a little bit later. But first, let's talk about the fights that took place this last weekend. Hey, listen, I break down these fights, and sometimes I get emails from you. You know that you've emailed me, and you say, hey, hey, Billy C, I usually respect your predictions, but sometimes, you're a little crazy. I like this week. He said, how can you pick Jarrell Miller, over Pero? I mean, here we got a young up and coming fighter, and all I'm thinking about all this time as I'm reading this, and I'm not going to expose him, but as I'm reading it, and I'm thinking Moses Atuma, because it's similar. They don't fight anybody, and everybody gets all, butthurt when, they don't perform the way they're supposed to. Well, Jarrell Miller, I predicted Jarrell Miller was going to win the fight. Why? Because all you had to do is look at the resume of both of these fighters. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not taking anything away from Pero. I think he's going to be a good fighter, and he's a very skilled fighter. But to me, it seemed like he took Jarrell Miller lightly. Jarrell Miller is a donut away from 350 pounds. We know that. We know he comes in overweight. But listen, the guy goes the distance. He finds a second and third win all the time. And I tell you, I know the game plan for Team Perro was to work the body, but it's like it doesn't affect him. It reminds me of when people tried to work the body of George Foreman too. When George Foreman came back as the cheeseburger eating, lovable grill guy. Some guys that look like they would get hurt in the belly just don't. And Jarrell Miller is one of those guys. I thought it was an entertaining fight. I mean, Perro came out and he did what I thought he would do. He displayed some excellent boxing skills, like most of the Cuban fighters, but because of their extensive amateur background, they don't get that rough and tumble bullying that Jarrell Miller does. I mean, I just knew. Listen, at the end of the day, it was an entertaining fight, but it became not close. The way the judges scored it, two judges had it the way I saw it, 117-111, which is the way I saw the fight. I mean, it wasn't close. But then you had the other judge. I don't know, maybe it was the position that he or she was sitting at, but they scored it 115-113. But at least everybody scored it for Jarrell Miller. He improves to 28 wins, 1 loss, and a couple of draws, with 22 of his wins coming by knockout. And Perro loses for the first time. He's now 13-1 with 8 knockouts. Look, I think that Vasily Lomachenko is a great example. All right, Vasily Lomachenko is a great example. I think he was one of, and he should get more recognition. For some reason, a lot of people don't give him recognition, but I think he was one of the best fighters ever, really. I mean, when you really look at his skill set, the problem is that he too had an extensive amateur career, and he came out on the scene. He fought a guy that knew when he lost, his first bid there, not his first fight, but when he lost, it was because he faced a guy that was doing roughhouse tactics, things that you learn as a pro. How to fight close, how to hold somebody off of you, how to smother their punches. I mean, all these things you pick up in the ring. That's why I like the European, well, specifically the England fighters, because they let some of these opponents, let's just call them professional opponents, guys that come in there with like a 15-75 record, but a lot of them don't get stopped. They don't have any skill, but they teach the young fighters, some of the dirtier tricks. But in any event, I think that Jarrell Miller's going to get another shot at a good fight, a big payday. He deserves it. Perro, listen, this is a lesson that everybody that's in the fight game should learn. All right. And what's the lesson? The lesson is that you can't coddle your fighters. If you're a manager or a promoter, stop coddling your fighters. You're not helping them. You're not. They're not getting better. When they fight the same level of opposition over and over and over, they don't get better. I'm sorry. They don't. And you can spar as much as you want. You're not going to get better. You need the real fights. You need the fights. You got to progressively step up the level of opposition. Speaking of which, another fight that was on the schedule last week that I wanted to talk about, Bryce Mills. Now, I have a personal connection to him. I don't know him personally, but I've seen him ringside many times because he fights at the Turning Stone, and I try to make all the professional boxing events at the Turning Stone. And he had won in his last fight at the Turning Stone. He had won the WBC's silver belt. Now, if you've never seen Bryce Mills fight, first of all, he's in fantastic shape. Second of all, he's got a huge fan base. And third of all, he is relentless. He throws punches after punches after punches. And, most of them, at least half of them land. He's not accurate. But at times he gets a little sloppy. But he's a good prospect. The one knock on him that I have is that the way he's built, he's very muscular. The way he lands punches sometimes, and the fact that he throws them in bunches, he just doesn't get the knockouts. Nonetheless, he won he fought a guy that really I knew he was going to win. I didn't think it would be that tough for him in Julio Rosa. At the end of the day, it was Rosa being stopped in this fight. And after the third round, he quit on his stool, basically. Rosa drops to 11 wins and 7 losses with only 6 knockouts. And a guy who I've witnessed myself many, many times not have the pop to stop somebody. So maybe he's developed it. And maybe Rosa was a guy to prove it. Bryce Mills improves to 22 wins, 1 loss, with 9 of his wins coming by knockout. And here's the thing, Bryce Mills, after he won that WBC silver title, he was saying, I want the big fights. Well, guess what? They announced the undercard for a huge fight coming up at the end of June, featuring Xander Zayas going up against Jaron Boots Ennis down in New York City. And guess what? You got Bryce Mills is going to be on that card. He's not only defending his WBC belt, but they're going to have the WBO Latino Super Lightweight title and the NABF Junior Lightweight title when he faces Emiliano Vargas, who's 17-0 with 14 knockouts. Huge, huge test for my man Bryce Mills. Should he get by this fight, then you could start remembering his name. I think he's going to have trouble, but we'll see. One other fight I wanted to talk about that took place this past weekend was Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., that is. He got kicked last I heard. I think he got kicked out of the States, and he made a comeback in the cruiserweight division now, and he knocked out his opponent, John Casito, in the third round, and now he's looking for shots in the cruiserweight division. So we'll see what happens with that. Those were my 3 fights that I wanted to talk about that took place that I thought were substantial and discussion-worthy fights. Oof, that was a mouthful, right? Speaking of the Zayas Enos fight that's taking place on June 27th, not only was the Bryce Mills and Emilio Vargas fight and added to that card, my man, and I say my man because I love watching this kid fight, Ben Whitaker. You guys saw him a couple of weeks ago. He ended up being the main event for a DAZN card. He's 11-0 with a draw, with 8 of his wins coming by knockout. He's stepping in the ring, and like Bryce Mills, stepping up his level of opposition when he fights Richard Rivera, who's 27-2 with 20 knockouts. It'll be a 10-round light heavyweight fight. And Jai Tucker is taking on Yuri Cedinho, also on that card. So those are some decent fights that have been added to that undercard. And, of course, you can watch that on DAZN. Anthony Joshua. Okay, we all watched Tyson Fury in his last fight, and we all saw that the main attraction, in addition to Tyson Fury, was Anthony Joshua, who was ringside with Eddie Hearn. And at the end of the fight, I personally, I think Tyson Fury realized that he needs to get a money fight. Maybe he shouldn't be racing for a world title fight, especially against Usyk anytime soon. So what does he do? I see Anthony Joshua, I want you, and Anthony Joshua sits there and, tries to play it cool. And we all know that Anthony Joshua too needs a big money fight. Well, it was made official. Well, kind of official. They announced Anthony Joshua's next fight. And his next fight is taking place on July 25th, and it will be on DAZN, and he's taking on Christian Prenga. Christian Prenga has got a record of 20 wins, 1 loss, but all 20 of his wins coming by knockout. Again, they're putting him in with Anthony Joshua, who's 28-4 with 25 of his wins coming by knockout. His 2 of his 4 losses were against Alexander Usyk. One was against Ruiz, and the other was against Daniel Dubois. All tough fights, and he's got some wins. I mean, I just haven't have seen a clip of the knockout punch or a couple of punches leading up to the knockout, and then the knockout punch that he laid on Klitschko. Man, when I watched that fight live, I thought Klitschko's head was going to end up in the third row. That was a devastating uppercut. But anyway, assuming Anthony Joshua takes care of business, it's also been announced that he's got a signed contract to fight Tyson Fury after the Prenga fight, and that date is not set, but it's going to be in the fall. So we'll be looking forward to that for sure. Hey, did you hear that Floyd Mayweather may be having some financial difficulty? Yeah. And like I said in the beginning, I actually have a tear welting up in my eye, feeling so terrible for a man that I think is responsible for the way the boxing landscape is today, with the cherry picking and the plethora of belts. Not that it's his fault with that, but anyway, he's got some new lawsuits now. That him and Manny Pacquiao, he had said that the fight, Manny Pacquiao claims that he's got a signed contract that the fight would be a real fight. It will go on their records, which Floyd has not denied. Netflix has that on their contract. And Floyd got some money up front to help him out or whatever. And then he says publicly that it's just an exhibition fight, that they're going to put on a great show and, blah, blah, blah. Well, Manny Pacquiao was threatening lawsuits. They have everything signed, sealed, and delivered. Netflix, that he was given money, all these things. And that quieted down. A lot of that seemed to have been resolved. Floyd hasn't come out and said anything publicly about the Manny Pacquiao fight, but it's quieted down. Manny's not complaining anymore. Netflix isn't complaining anymore. So it seems that he is going to live up to it, right? He's going to honor it, which he's probably training his butt off, because the biggest thing you could do to him is put an L on his record, because he's fabricated this. He's the best ever because he's got a 50-0 record, which I've talked about this on this show many times. Probably, if you've been watching this show, I mean, we're in our 23rd year. But if you've been watching this show for any length of time, I'm sure you have heard me say it. But I'm going to say it again. The 50-0 record only meant something in the heavyweight division. And the reason is because nobody ever got past 49-0. Nobody ever said in the heavyweight division, nobody ever said that, 49-0, 49 fights in any other division, because there was many other divisions. As a matter of fact, I'm wrong. I believe that, he had lost a couple of his fights early. I'm sorry. He had 200 and something wins, but he had lost a couple of fights early. Anyway, I'm going off into a tangent, but no heavyweight fighter started their career at 49-0, and obviously none of them retired at 49-0. It was, about the heavyweights, because there were a lot of younger, smaller fighters that won more fights. I mean, Julio Cesar Chavez, I believe, 80 fights before he lost one, but Mayweather was successful in selling that to people that really don't know. But in any event, I could see why he's afraid, because now he's older, and, he didn't fight Manny Pacquiao when the world really wanted to see it 5 years earlier, which Manny, there was nobody that was beating Manny at that time, especially Floyd. But when Floyd and Manny fought, Manny did a stupid thing. I mean, Floyd won the fight. It is what it is. There's no question about it. He won the fight. Anybody that says that Manny won, hey, listen, nobody wanted Manny to win more than me, but he didn't win the fight. But then it comes out that he injured his shoulder, and, he went on with the fight because he didn't want to disappoint his fans. Well, that was a stupid thing by Manny Pacquiao, because Floyd Mayweather, I mean, if he had an ingrown toenail, if he had a pimple, he would have called off the fight, because he wants to be 100%. And I think that's smart, that you need to be 100%, especially in a fight of that magnitude. And Manny made a mistake. But what does all that mean? Nothing, because now apparently Team Mike Tyson is suing him because he's canceling an event that they had signed contracts for in the Congo. All right. And then they starting to air some of the dirty laundry, and they're giving numbers that are all been backed up and factual, right? So, like for example, this past April, the feds, the IRS, filed a public federal lien against Floyd Mayweather, saying that he owes over $7 million, $279,664.45 as of July. Now, I don't know if any of you ever experienced how ruthless the IRS could be, but you're getting, penalties and interest every day. I mean, they're worse than a loan shark. In a separate file, apparently one of his jets, he's got to fly around the whole team. He owes them $106,000 that they filed a judgment against him, and have a judgment against him. He's got a defaulted loan of almost $1 million, 900,000, and unpaid rent in apartment he has in Manhattan. That's close to $350,000. These are all debts that he owes, right? $350,000. And then to top it all off, the Manny Pacquiao, he had a gym that he owned, Floyd Mayweather. And, I had seen many posts, plus news things, plus my man Coach, who's in the chat room, had sent me a link to that as well, where Manny Pacquiao came in and bought out the gym, bought out Mayweather's gym. What a slap in Mayweather's face. I love it. But all the employees were complaining that Floyd hadn't paid them. This one girl was saying she hadn't been paid in months. So this is all the stuff that Floyd's been doing, and people think he's so great. So it looks like over $9 million in debt. Plus, he's got rumored defaults, which I didn't have public numbers on several of his cars that he bought, the jewelry that he wears. I could see Floyd Mayweather in the hole for somewhere between $15 and $20 million in debt right now. This is a guy whose nickname, who earned $1.4 billion, close to $1.4 billion when he fought in the ring. His nickname was Money, and now he can't. Now he owes almost $15 million at least. It's kind of funny to me. I hate to say it. It's comical. Is it sad? Yeah, because he acted like he was so smug. It's sad for him. But Coach is in the chat room saying, yeah, his chains aren't real either. Well, I'm not going to get into that. But hey, you know what it's time for? The Zuffa boxing update. Yeah, you guys, I look, I do like Zuffa boxing. I like what they're doing. Obviously, the rumors that he was never going to work with other promoters is false, because as you know, Zuffa Boxing signed a long-term deal, not only with Paramount here in the States, TV deal, in a streaming deal, but not only with Paramount here in the States, which is huge. He also signed a deal in the UK with Sky Sports. Now, if you recall, those Brits, the British promoters, all used to do Sky Sports too. They jumped on the Zone, and somehow Dana and Zuffa Boxing got the deal. Well, their first card that they're putting on Sky Sports in UK is June 6th, and the main event is one of Zuffa Boxing's fighters, Billiam Smith, and he is going to be taking on Riziki. Now, Riziki, my whole point here, Riziki is a tough cat. There's no question. But my whole point here is Riziki's promotional team is tickled pink that they're working with Zuffa Boxing. Lions Den Promotions is who they are, and they're tickled. They're happy. They're glad that they're working with Zuffa Boxing. So I mean, look, and Billiam Smith, he's making a mistake of looking past Rizicki, but Chris is already calling out Jay Apatea. And Jay Apatea, what does he have? He's got the Zuffa Cruiserweight world title. So yeah, Zuffa Boxing, they seem to be one step ahead of the promoters every time we turn around. And speaking of that, next week they have their next card, which is taking place May 10th. It's Zuffa 6. Obviously, he's doing the same thing that he did with UFC. And, it's going to be a pretty decent competitive card. When you look at these guys that he has on these cards, they may not be, the Tyson Furies or the huge names yet, but they're very competitive fights. So you know that when you tune in to these fights, that you're going to get treated to an entertaining fight. And, this fight is no difference. Shane Mosley Jr. Is taking on Serhii Boachuk, which is going to be a pretty entertaining fight. Are they both undefeated? No. Shane Mosley Jr. is 22-5 with 12 knockouts, and Boachuk is 27-3 with 24 knockouts. It's in the middleweight division. It's the main event. The co-main is Julian Rodriguez, 25-1 with 15 knockouts in the welterweight division, and he's taking on James Perella, who's 21-0 with 15 knockouts as well. And then they also got Michelle Rodriguez, 16-0 with 8 knockouts, taking on Andrios Karazorkis in another middleweight fight. And Karazorkis is 16-0 with 11 knockouts. So, I mean, at least on paper, these fights really look competitive. And I'll tell you, so far, the fights that we have seen from Zuffa have been competitive. And after all, that's what I'm into, man. That's what I'm into, boys and girls. I'm into competitive fights. I can't stand tuning in to a fight that's not competitive. Was Jarrell Miller and Lanier Perro an entertaining fight? Shit, yeah, it was. It was an entertaining fight. It was a disappointing fight for Team Perro, but it was an entertaining fight. And I like that. It didn't have to be for a title. This whole misconception of fights being has to have a title attached to them it's a crock of what. The reason fighting was so popular in the earlier years, specifically, hey, listen, the TV years for boxing was in the 50s and 60s and even into the 70s. In the 50s and 60s, there was so much boxing on television, and there was only like 3 channels, and I'm not kidding you. There was so much boxing on television. Well, the thing is back then they wouldn't be able to broadcast as broadly, so because of the broadcast technique. So, from town to town or location, maybe a state, they could only broadcast this to a certain degree, like a radio station could only reach a certain territory. And that was similar to the way television was broadcast. So there may have been 3 stations here, 4 stations there, but boxing was on a lot of these stations on different nights. I mean, it was like there was boxing every night. They actually used to have to put out a boxing television guide that would show you the fights that were coming up on TV that was scheduled to be on TV. So, that was the TV age, and those fights were entertaining. Guys didn't always win. They weren't all undefeated. They weren't cherry picking fights. They were fighting the next guy in line. Plus, to get a title shot was a lot more difficult than it was today. And I just feel that some of these Zuffa matchups are throwbacks to that. Coach is saying CBS, NBC, ABC, Wild World Sports, free TV. Yeah, the truth of the matter is I got to see some of the best fights on Wild World of Sports in the afternoon. Listen, one of the first fights I ever remember watching, was Muhammad Ali fighting Jimmy Young. And I'm 99% sure that was a ABC Wide World of Sports fight. And it was on during the day, and on a Saturday. And I remember watching that fight, thinking Jimmy Young beat him. Ali got the title. Got the kept the title. He had the belt. But some other fights on this light heavyweight in the light heavyweight division. Surrey Matumovic is taking on Rafael Mani. Matumovic is 8-1 with a draw and 6 of his wins coming by knockout, and Mani is 9-0 with 3 knockouts. Again, I honestly have never heard of these two fighters, but records kind of tell me that it's going to be entertaining. At least they look good on paper. Justin Villora, 12-0 with 8 knockouts against Ivan Ortiz, who's 12-0 with a couple of draws and 9 knockouts. That's in the lightweight division. Also in the heavyweight division, Damazian Van Hooter, he's 11-0 with 8 knockouts, taking on a guy I know you've heard of if you follow boxing, Raphael Murphy. He's 18-1, and that's an 8-round heavyweight fight. In the bantamweight division, Alexis Alvarado, 9-1 with a draw and 5 knockouts, taking on Emilio Cardenas, who's 10-0 with 4 knockouts. I mean, every one of these fights seem competitive, except for this one. Rakamatulio Boymatov is making his pro debut, and he's stepping in the ring with Al Stanton, who's 9-1 with 6 knockouts in the light heavyweight division. I'm not familiar with either one of these two fighters, but I would bet dollars to donuts that Boymatov is an experienced amateur fighter. So we'll see what happens. But again, this is the May 10th Zuffa boxing card. And, we already heard that Chris Billiam-Smith is taking on Rizicki in the Zuffa inaugural United Kingdom event, which is taking place on June 6th. So I would imagine that would be the Zuffa Boxing 7. And, I just think that this is going to be a knock'em sock'em fight as well. And like I said, Chris Billiam-Smith is already calling out, calling out Jay Apatea for a shot at his belt. I got Coach in the chat room here. Just give a shout out to everybody in the chat room. I haven't even glanced over there. I've been trying to look straight ahead. People tell me, oh, I watch your show and you're always looking down. You're always looking down. Well, let me explain. Let me tell you why, boys and girls, because my camera is right there. I'm pointing at the camera, right? So I look at the camera, right? But when I have a guest on, he's on my screen. You see him, but he's on my screen or she's on my screen. So when I'm talking to them, I'm looking at them. And I think it's weird if I look up and I'm doing this and I can't do anything else when so that's why. That's so I'm trying to make it that I'm not looking down all the time. But Coach is saying Clay Liston, I was 8, the whole family watched. Yeah, boxing. Look, how about the era when we were, Coach, I'm saying we, when we were young adults, the closed circuit TV era, where a lot of the big fights were on closed circuit TV. And when cable first started being introduced slowly but surely, you could get these closed circuit broadcasts on your cable. Otherwise, you used to have to go to a place to watch it. Like I remember, seeing several fights at a civic center. So, and it was kind of cool, man. It was on a huge screen. It made such an impact on me that years later, Sal, Rocky Senecola, and I did a series. I know you guys have heard me talk about it. It was called Boxing Revisited. And, we took and rebroadcast some of these fights that are classics that had already taken place, and we broadcast it. We would have a hall we rented out, or a big ballroom, and we used to rebroadcast the fight on a big screen, and we had people there. We had food and bars or what have you, and we were broadcasting it, calling the fight as if it was happening live, and it was fun. We had the rights to rebroadcast a bunch of these fights from Steve Lott, who was involved with Big Fights Incorporated, which was Jacobs and what's his name, Clayton, who had that fight video collection that eventually had been sold to ESPN. And Steve had the ones that didn't go, and he digitized a lot of them, and he gave us the rights to rebroadcast, and we had a great time doing that. And to be honest with you, that whole feel, one of the reasons why I decided to give it a shot when we did the first one was because of the impact that the closed circuit fights made me feel back in those days when you used to have to go to an auditorium and all of that stuff. Hey, listen, I told you guys that there's a new book out, Michael Jinx Spinks. It's, I believe, the only book written on Michael Spinks. And joining us right now is the author of this book, my man, Jack Hirsch. Joins us. What's up, Jack?
Hey, Billy. Thanks for having me on. I've been listening to you backstage. Good stuff. The Ali Jimmy Young fight, I believe, was in the evening from Landover, Maryland. It was a night fight. That wasn't an afternoon Wide World of Sports fight. Ali did fight on Wide World of Sports a good number of times, but the fight against Young was in the evening. It was a weeknight, as I recall.
Yeah, I wonder if you think they rebroadcast, because they used to do that on ABC.
Yeah, that's very possible that they rebroadcast that. And it appeared on Wide World of Sports because it was a controversial decision, as you said. A lot of people, including yourself, thought Young won the fight.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, let's talk about your book. I have it right here. I'm going to show it. Michael's Jinx Spinks, and I do believe, am I right? It's the only book ever written on Michael so far, right?
Only book. There was a book that came out on both Spinks brothers about in the year 2011 or thereabouts. But any book that would come out on both Leon and Michael Spinks would focus a little more on Leon because of his personality and his charisma. This is the only book ever written on Michael Spinks, and it's an authorized biography, meaning Michael Spinks worked with me on the book. So it wasn't just a question of me writing a book on Michael Spinks. I did the writing, but we worked on it together, spent many hours together.
All right, listen. So we got a live chat room going on here, and I have my one of my regulars in here. He always likes to crash and come up with his own questions. So before I even ask you one of mine, I am going to put his in there. Let me see if I can get it to come up on it. Okay, he's saying, ask Jack in the boxing news series on the Golden Gloves decline were issues like election disputes, infighting, blah, blah, blah.
Wow. That's great that someone remembers that. I wrote a 4-part series, the demise really of the New York Golden Gloves and the infighting that was going on with, the Golden Gloves, the Metros and everything. But everyone had a different version of what went on, basically. But the bottom line is the Golden Gloves was a magic name. And we don't have the Golden Gloves anymore, that name. It's called the Metros. They're starting a new history on their own. And I've been out of the loop since in amateur boxing these last few years, what's been transpiring and so on. So it's kind of hard for me to answer. But it was an investigative piece I did. I was proud of it. But the bottom line is they never got it together. the New York Daily News, and the Metros. And but listen, amateur boxing's thriving. The Metros are doing a good job by all accounts.
Jack, look, so I wanted to ask you some stuff about the book. It was a great read. And when I was reading the part, of course, about the Mike Tyson fight, I always thought that Spinks lost the fight before he even set foot in the ring. I'll never forget the look on his face coming down, walk during the ring walk. There were two looks on fighters' faces I'll never forget. The look of fear on Michael Spinks's face walking down down that aisle, and then not related to this, but Evander Holyfield's look of confidence when he was walking down the aisle when he fought and beat Mike Tyson. But I was shocked that he admitted that. You wrote in the book that he admitted that he was scared. He regrets feeling that way. Tell us about that.
But he says he didn't lose the fight because he froze, because he was scared. He admitted at one point he was up at night and he was worried what Tyson might actually do to him, but he put it out of his mind. And Wally Matthews, who was covering the fight, a New York reporter, was by ringside, and he heard Spinks say right before he entered the ring, Wally told me, that Spinks says, well, I'm going to do the best I can. But that was always Michael's attitude. He didn't feel he was going to beat Larry Holmes when they fought the first time. He thought he could win, but he didn't necessarily feel he would win. His attitude was always, I'm going to do the best I can and let the chips fall where they may. What hurt Michael most in that fight is he was a notoriously slow starter, and Tyson was a very quick, explosive starter. And Michael had to be ready to sprint from the opening bell, basically. He didn't have time to warm up, but he was fighting in the fashion he did all his fights. I mean, and if you look at Michael's light heavyweight title defenses, he would usually lose, early rounds, even against a fighter like David Sears. Sears outboxed him the first 2 rounds before Michael landed a big punch and stopped Sears in the 3rd round. And against Tyson, that had devastating consequences. He just never got going. Tyson caught him. And Michael said, look, he had some fear of Tyson. He admitted it. But he said it wasn't a type of fear that prohibited him from performing at his best.
Well, I was shocked to read further that he was kind of pissed off that he never got a chance at a rematch. Tell us about that.
No, he wasn't pissed off about it, Billy. He understood. Immediately afterwards, he would have liked a rematch, but Michael also took a vow during his years as light heavyweight champion. He was going to keep fighting until he got beat. That's very unusual. Most fighters talk about retiring unbeaten who haven't lost a fight. Michael's attitude was, as soon as I lose, I've had it. But then when he lost to Tyson, he talked about an immediate rematch, but he was sensible. He knew he wasn't going to get it. It was such a tough fight to put together, him and Mike Tyson, to begin with. And especially when he lost in the fashion he did, there was going to be no demand for a rematch. This wasn't like Floyd Patterson and Sonny Liston, where Patterson got knocked out in 1 round, because Patterson was the sole champion in the public's view. So when Liston knocked him out, Liston nearly had an obligation to give Patterson a rematch. Tyson had no obligation to do that with Spinks, and it wasn't a marketable fight afterwards. Even now, Spinks says now, if I fought him in a rematch, I don't think I would have beat him. So if Spinks feels that way now, imagine how everyone else would have felt if a rematch was made.
Well, you stumbled on one of my points. One thing I've always admired about fighters is when they say they retire and stay retired. And Michael did that. And hearing you say that, it was kind of in the back of his mind that when he lost, he was going to hang him up. But it also seemed that it took a long time for Michael Spinks to, I don't know if I could say, to accept the retirement. He was never really outgoing with his fan base or anything. I noticed in the last few years he's a lot better. He's more, he's more obtainable and approachable, because he never was. I've crossed paths with him several times in the past, and he was very hard to talk to. What's changed?
Well, he's hard to talk to now. For the book, I would really have to push him to talk to me because he's not a man of many words. And if he was a man of many words, I would have had him on here today with us, Billy. But Michael, he's just very agreeable. He doesn't have much to say. I've never seen a fighter with less of an ego than him. You could tell him, I think Saad Muhammad would have knocked you out. Bob Foster would have knocked you out. This guy would have beaten you. And he'd just say, you're entitled to your opinion, and it wouldn't bother him. It wouldn't bother him. What he missed most about boxing after losing to Tyson is boxing was his job. Actually, it was the only full-time job he ever had as an adult. I mean, he was in maintenance a little while coming back from the Olympics. He delivered newspapers as a teenager for a little while, but he missed his job. He missed his routine. Michael didn't like the time off. He liked the idea of getting up in the morning, doing road work, then going to the gym in the afternoon. And he didn't have his routine anymore, and he didn't know what to do with his time. And what Michael then started to do, and he's done it for a good amount of years, he's a little bit of a recluse. He goes in his room, he closes the door, and he watches television a good part of the day. I mean, that's Michael. That's why in recent years, when he gets to go out to these banquets, he's happy, because that's about, one of the few times he actually gets out. And he gets to meet people, and he enjoys meeting his old opponents. He enjoys meeting fans. If anyone stops him, he's happy to oblige him. He's a nice person, a nice guy.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good to hear. His two fights. I look. A lot of people forget how great he was in the light heavyweight division, and he certainly was really one of the all-time greats. But myself, I've always liked and admired his two fights with Larry Holmes. And I know some people think, one of the fights was controversial. I don't. I think he clearly won both fights, and the way he won them was very similar. He would just get in and get out. He would land those punches, and Larry couldn't do anything, in my opinion. I mean, yes, he chased him around, but Michael Spinks fought a smart fight. It almost looked, I remember him throwing the punches, and I was saying to myself, it almost looks like it's hurting Michael Spinks to throw these punches. He had that look on his face. Tell us about those fights, because I know they're instrumental in the history of Michael Spinks.
No, I talked to Larry for the book as well, and Larry seemed to let go. He didn't tell me anything that I thought was so revealing. His thing was, well, it's not Michael's fault. The judges scored it the way it did. Michael's a nice guy. I got nothing against Michael. It's not his fault what the judges did, like one of those. And for a lot of years, Michael was very leery of Larry Holmes. He didn't want to go near him. In fact, it's in the book. When Larry Holmes, I think the year was 2016, invited Michael to his golf tournament in Eastern Pennsylvania, Michael said he'd go, and then the day before he got cold feet. He was worrying what Larry might do to him. That's how deep it was personally. He was a little scared. And then when Michael didn't show, Larry called up, what's with Michael? I invited him as a guest. They're good today because Larry has let go. I wouldn't call them best friends. Like I said, you can invite them to dinner. They'll break bread together. They'll sit at the same table. But maybe it's better that one person sits between them, even though they get along fine. Michael still feels Larry has a little edgy about those decisions. But you mentioned that you thought Michael won both fights. Most people feel Michael edged the first fight, but there are people who do feel Larry won. Then there's the second fight, which some people feel Michael won, but more people than not, including its writer, feel Larry, was a couple of points ahead at the end. But this is something that you should remember in sports in general. you need to close an opponent out. And when Larry jumped off to a big early lead in the second fight, he allowed Michael to get back into the fight and get within range to get the decision. And it got so the term robbery is so overused. I mean, once in a while we see a robbery, like Roy Jones not getting the decision in the Olympics. That's a blatant robbery. Alfredo Escalera being given the decision over Tyrone Everett, that was a blatant robbery. I mean, Jorge Homada being given a draw against Bob Foster, that was a robbery. We shouldn't say decisions like that are subjective, but there's certain close fights. We shouldn't call them robberies. We shouldn't say Holmes was robbed in the second fight because there are people who share your opinion, Bill. Like I talked to for the book, Bone Crusher Smith. He thinks Michael won both fights. And why would he say that? He lost twice to Larry Holmes, Bone Crusher. So if anything, he want Larry to look good. And other people have that opinion as well. A lot of them that Michael deserved the decision in the second fight. It's kind of split down the middle in a sense.
Well, I agree with you 100% about the term robbery being overused. I mean, it makes me sick. You know, one of the best things that I think I ever saw, and they never did it again, was when ESPN put cameras on the heads of the three judges and they were able to show you a punch, okay, and what each, from the viewpoint that each judge had of the same punch. And, you know, that makes a huge difference on the scorecards, because you and I could be watching the same fight and we see a punch and you could say, oh, you know, hey, Bill, that was a great punch. And I'd say, what do you mean? It grazed him. He moved out of the way. You know, that's what I saw. You know, that's where the word subjective comes in. And I think sometimes with the view of the specific judges will indicate what their scorecard is. And sometimes it's not cut and dry. And when it's close, you hit it on the head. You got to close out the show. You don't necessarily have to knock a guy out, but you got to win every round. You can't assume, you know, and I agree 100%.
Bill, you make a great point. It's the angle that you're on. I remember going to a club show once out on Long Island, and I was hanging out with one of the judges who wasn't judging that fight. He was waiting for the next fight. And we all thought one fighter clearly won the fight. But all three judges gave it to the other one, and we determined the angle we were on. All we saw, they were locked in close, the two fighters. All we saw was the back of one fighter. So the angle has, you know, such a big bearing on it. And it makes you think. I mean, the referee had his vote taken away, but actually the referees had the best angle of judging a fight, you know, of anyone. But with all their other responsibilities, I'm not advocating for them to be judges again. But you're 100% correct. It's the angle that you're on.
Yeah, no, it definitely makes a difference. And you know, sometimes fighters just have a tendency to feel comfortable at a certain place in the ring. They always, you know, navigate over to the one spot they seem to like, you know, and if the judge that doesn't see well, you know, hey, where does that one judge have it? Well, maybe it's because of the way he sees it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so what's the story? What's the inside scoop about the Butch Lewis, the disappointment in Butch Lewis?
Man, oh man, Butch Lewis did a lot of great things for Michael. Okay, we got to give Butch Lewis his due, and but not such a good thing at the very end the way it turned out. But when we were doing this book, at one point Michael looked very, very sad when I was talking with him about Butch, because when we agreed to do the book, I told Michael I was going to ask him a lot of questions that were going to make him feel very uncomfortable. And it wasn't going to be a fan book. And I was going to respect his boundaries on certain things, that I'm not going to talk to a couple of people he might not want me to talk to, and a couple of things I can leave out. But all in all, I had to have editorial control. And when it came to Butch Lewis and what happened with his money, I'm not going to avoid that. I let him know that. You know, and Michael, I also told him, you have a few warts, and it's going to have to come out. It can't be a completely self-serving fan book. And he, to his credit, he agreed to that. The good Butch Lewis did for him was, even in the words of Russell Peltz and Don Majeski, the best job of moving a fighter they've ever seen, getting him the right fight set, practically every stage and building his career up. And fantastic job. The bad part about this was this. Michael trusted Butch unconditionally to the point where he let Butch hold on to his money, all his money. And Butch would be paying him a lifetime allowance. Butch paid all his bills. And Butch, he cared about Michael in everyone's view. It's not like he didn't. There were some, like Don Majeski, who said, of course he would care about Michael because Michael was his golden goose. Butch could be very rude to everybody, secretaries in the office, anyone. But with Michael, he was always polite. But when Michael was light heavyweight champion, Butch would give him $1,000 a week, spending money, and pay his expenses. When Michael became heavyweight champion, he increased it to $10,000 a month, and he continued to pay Michael's expenses. Now, when Michael's last fight was in 1988, as you know, against Mike Tyson, Butch lived till the year 2011. Butch continued to pay all of Michael's expenses and everything the same way. But in 2011, Butch had died. He died. All of a sudden, Michael became destitute. He saw taxes weren't paid for a few years. His utilities were cut off, car payments, this, that. And Michael didn't have a penny to his name. I mean, he had to borrow some money, to get an attorney, and he had to sue Butch Lewis's estate as much as he hated to do it. And what's amazing about this is that Michael, had to have a clue Butch was in declining health. What would be of his money? But Michael was so carefree, he never did. But Butch had a couple of really good things for Michael when Michael was a world champion. He set up a retirement account that drew interest, and it was somewhere in the vicinity between 55 and 85,000. And Michael forgot all about the retirement account, and all of a sudden it clicked. Wow, Butch had some retirement account for me. Let me look into it. And the people at the bank had been trying to contact Michael, but they could never get through because Michael never answered. It was in Delaware. Butch also saw to it that Michael buy his home in Delaware, a block away from where Joe Biden lived, and pay it all off. So Michael has this big chip in Delaware now, a home that I estimate would be a couple of $1 million or so if you elected to sell it. But Michael is living now with his wife, Flo Anthony, in New York. They got married as the book went to press, but they've been together since the 1980s, and she's kind of been his agent and all. But to sum up, Michael had sued Butch Lewis's estate. He got back an extra $600,000 on top of it. Michael is comfortable with all his finances. He doesn't have nearly the wealth that he should have, not nearly, but Michael is in a nice situation. He's no worse than upper middle class. And as long as he lives off the interest of what he has, he'll be fine. He'll be fine as long as he lives off the interest and doesn't, spend extravagantly going forward.
That's good to know. I got one more question for you. I'll
keep my answer shorter. If you have more questions, I could be a little long-winded. I should observe the bell.
No. Hey, no. What are you talking about? This is great. No, I love it, and I'll be sending you some links and stuff. But listen, you had the opportunity of really, digging deep into Michael Spinks's head. What was in your opinion, or maybe for a fact, what do you think Michael's proudest moment or proudest victory was in boxing? I mean, he achieved so much, but what do you think was the best thing he's ever done in his mind?
It depends the day you talk to Michael because he varies between the Olympics, winning the light heavyweight title, then winning the heavyweight title. And he keeps going back and forth. It depends the day you catch him on. Uh, the Holmes fight, winning the heavyweight title, I think Michael regards that as his greatest accomplishment. But I think it was the Olympics because he got to share that moment directly with Leon. Now, when he beat Holmes, it was partly personal with Michael. He had nothing against Larry Holmes personally, but Holmes had stopped his brother Leon, who Michael was very close with. And so he got a certain amount of satisfaction. It wasn't just winning the heavyweight title. It was kind of getting one back for his brother, who he was, very, like I said, very close with. Both of them kept late hours. It would be very common for Michael and Leon to be in a phone conversation at 2:30 in the middle of the night, laughing and joking with one another. Michael said Butch called him Dracula because he'd come out at night. He'd keep these crazy hours. He still does. He's a late sleeper in the morning, but he's up late at night. I think if Michael, you pinned him down exactly what was his greatest thrill, he would say it was the Olympics. I'll tell you what his greatest regret is. I'll tell you that, Billy, not having the chance to fight Matthew Saad Muhammad. Now, even though Michael beat Dwight Muhammad Qawi to unify the light heavyweight title, it wasn't the same because Michael and Qawi used to spar a lot in Joe Frazier's gym. They sparred so many rounds, both of them knew one another well. So this unification match was kind of a continuation of what they did in the past. Plus, Michael and Qawi, even though they didn't want to admit it, they were kind of fond of one another. They had an okay relationship. But Saad Muhammad got on Michael's nerves to the point where one day Michael told me a story. He showed up at Joe Frazier's gym where Michael was based in Philadelphia from 1978 to 1985, and they sparred. He wanted to make Michael look bad, like you're not a real champ. And according to Michael, this is only Michael's version, Michael did a job on him, bloodied his nose, and so on. But I'll tell you, Michael doesn't have the biggest ego because my favorite story of the book, and you're going to love this, Billy, was in Joe Frazier's gym. Joe Frazier and Butch Lewis were like brothers. They were so close. Michael and Joe Frazier liked one another. But one day, Michael, when he's light heavyweight champ, goes up to Joe's office and he's teasing him. He's joking with him. And Joe had had enough. Joe was retired. Next thing Michael knows, in the ring with the gloves on, and Michael's a world champion at this point. He feels I can handle Joe easy. He's not in shape. Is he kidding? Well, the bell rings, and Michael is shocked because Joe comes out smoking. He's throwing these left hooks. And Michael says, I'm running all over the ring. If he was in shape, he could have torn my head off. I'm just trying to survive. And he said, and even he loves this story even today, Michael. He says, good thing for me, Joe wasn't in shape. I hate to think what would have happened to me if he was.
That's great. That's great. It really sounds like you got a good opportunity to talk deep with Michael Spinks, and it's something that I know not many people have gotten. But great book. Where can people get this book?
Yeah. The people can get the book, Michael Jinx Spinks. Best way to go about it on the Amazon website, the Barnes & Noble website, the Target website, the Walmart website, the various websites to order it that way.
Well, it's good, Jack. I appreciate you coming on. And, I'm going to be doing this roundtable in the near future. And I think, I've been trying to figure out, I wanted to have 4 other people and stuff. I think you would fit in. So maybe.
I've been around a while. I've got credentials, Billy. I was 6-time president of the Boxing Writers Association of America. I've been around. I sat in the last row of the first Ali Frazier fight. That's how far back I go.
Well,
last row.
You earned a spot on our roundtable. We're going to be talking. You're
going to slip me, and I'll come in on late notice if I'm available. If someone cancels out,
no,
I don't stand on principle when it comes to talking about
it's gonna be
boxing.
something around this time. It will all be on. It's gonna be good. I'll be in touch with
Great,
you on that.
great.
I'll
It
also
would be a
be in touch.
pleasure.
I'll get you some links, and we'll go from there. I really appreciate you coming on, Jack.
Great, Billy, and I appreciate you having me.
All
Okay,
right,
all the best.
all
Take
right,
care.
my man. I'll
Okay,
talk to you
bye.
soon. That's
Bye.
Jack Hirsch, and like you said, you can get his book, Michael Jinx Spinks, right here. It's a good read. You got to get yourself a copy. Amazon is the place, and like he said, Walmart and Target, or any place you want to get a good book, get this book, Jack Hirsch's Michael Jinx Spinks. All right, and yeah, I'm definitely gonna have him on. We're gonna have I shouldn't even tell you, but we're gonna have a couple of now that Jack's gonna join us as well. We're gonna have a couple of historians, and we're going to be talking about the old days of boxing and what made that, in my opinion, and I'm sure in most of theirs, better. Even though we could make the argument that the talent, this is kind of a trick question, the talent of the fighters of today um, is better. But they don't fight, so the boxing isn't better. Does that make sense? The potential talent of fighters today, because of the fighters from yesterday, have honed some of those, some of those skill sets. They just don't use them, but because athletically, we're better today than we were. Maybe not boxing. I don't know. That's what the roundtable is going to be about, huh? All right, breakdowns and predictions. Listen, there's some good fights on the undercards of these two fights. But I'm going to break down, in my opinion, the two biggest fights. And I'm going to the weekend. I think either one of them could potentially be a fight of the year candidate. As a matter of fact, I think both of them are going to be extremely entertaining. We'll talk about the first fight, and that puts pound for pound top fighter. He's the monster. No, he's another monster. The monster. Naoya Inoue is the unified super bantamweight champion. He's got a record of 32 wins, 0 losses. 27 of his wins coming by knockout. He's ranked number 1 in the world by the computers. He is a unified champion, having all the belts. He's also the ring champion, and ESPN, who doesn't have a champion, ranks him number 1. He's got the same amount of professional fights as his opponent, Junto Nakatani, but he's got 41 more rounds as a pro. Inoue has 205 rounds. His knockout ratio is above 84%, which is actually about 10% more than his opponent. He's 33 years old. He's an orthodox fighter. At 5'5", he's given up 3 inches to his opponent. But the reach is about the same. He's 67 and a half. His opponent is 68 and a half. Look, he's got some great wins over some top-notch fighters: David Picasso, Ramon Cardenas, Louis Neary, Marlon Tapales, Stephen Fulton, Paul Butler, and of course Nonito Donaire. Nonito Donaire was not at his best, but he was blown away. He's an exciting fighter to watch. He's been down, but he gets up, and he's like a national treasure in Japan. He's being talked about to fight Bam Rodriguez. Everybody wants to see that fight. I'm actually a little surprised. He seems to have been around so long. He's 33, and these lower weight classes, they age a lot quicker. 32 wins, 27 knockouts. Now he steps in the ring with Junto Nakatani. He's got the same amount of fights, 32. Same amount of losses, none. He's got a little less knockouts at 24. He's got almost 10% knockout ratio less. Nakatani comes in at 75%. He's got 164 rounds as a pro, which, like I said earlier, is 41 rounds less than Inoue. The computer has him ranked at number 2, right behind Inoue. The WBC, the WBO, and the WBA all have him ranked at number 1. He's not rated by the IBF. Now, I just want to pause for a minute. This is one of my biggest problems, okay? This is one of my biggest problems is when you got clearly a top fighter. Here we, have clearly the number 1 and number 2 fighters in this division. Every sanctioning body recognizes it but one. The Ring has them up in the top 3 as well as the ESPN. So, I mean, everybody that's ranking fighters have these guys close together, and this is what makes this fight so good, in my opinion, that, it's as close as being even as you can get. He's a southpaw, and at 5'8", like I said before, he's 3 inches taller, but only an inch longer arm reach at 68.5. His 3 best wins as a pro, there was a lot of good wins for Inoue. The 3 best wins for Nakatani, at least in my opinion, June 8th in 2025, it was a 6th round stoppage over Rozoki Nishida. In February of 2025, a 3rd round stoppage over David Contreras. And back in October of 2024, he got a 6th round stoppage over Tisana Salapat. And Salapat had 76 wins and 1 loss when Nakatani beat him. Now, in his last fight, he fought Sebastian Reyes. It took place December of last year, actually December 27th. And he won a 12-round decision over Sebastian Reyes. I didn't think he looked that good in that fight. He won a unanimous decision, and one of the judges had it pretty lopsided. The other 2 had it pretty close, I believe, if I recall correctly, 115, 113. I know one judge was and highly in favor, but I watched that fight, and I thought it was close. As a matter of fact, I thought Nakatani was running out of gas towards the end of the fight, and he's going to need a full tank if he expects to beat Inoue. I think this is going to be an entertaining fight. I think we might see a couple of knockdowns in this fight. Maybe both fighters get knocked down. But at the end of the day, what I saw in Nakatani, now maybe he was looking ahead because they all knew that if he beat Reyes, he was going to face Inoue. Maybe he was looking ahead. But to me, I don't know. There was something up with Nakatani in that last fight, in my opinion. He won the fight. He won a unanimous decision. But, he didn't look as dominating as he has with most of his previous fights for the last year or so. I mean, last several years or so. Because of that, and because Inoue has not seemed to fade at all, I'm picking Inoue in this fight, and I think it's going to be an extremely entertaining fight. Now, David the Monster Benavidez is taking on Gilberto Ramirez. I want to start off by saying the similarities between these 2 fighters is freaky. They're very similar, okay? Their styles are similar. Their stories are similar. Their build is similar. I'll start off with Ramirez. His record, 48 wins, 30 coming by knockout. He's only got 1 loss, and that was against Dmitry Bivol back in 2022. He lost a 12-round decision when he was a light heavyweight. Now, when you look at Ramirez, he got on the map as a super middleweight, and he had some pretty good wins at super middleweight. Giovanni Lorenzo, he had a win. Zuniga, Maxim Vlasev, all wins at super middleweight. Then, he fights at light heavyweight, and he was beating some good fighters. I mean, you look at his resume, Tommy Carpenter, he beats him, Alfonso Lopez, Sullivan Barrera was a a major player in the light heavyweight division when he fought him back in 21. Dominic Baselli, Joe Smith Jr. when he moved to cruiserweight. We all know how tough Joe Smith Jr. was. My man Coach knows a little about Joe Smith. Won a 10-round decision over him. He fought Chris Billiam Smith, who's fighting again. We were just talking about him with Zuffa Boxing. Yuri Dorticos, he's got a win over. I mean, look, he's been in there with some pretty good opponents. He started out at middleweight and super middleweight back in 2008. He moved to light heavyweight in 2019. And then he moved to cruiserweight in 2023. Before I really dissected this, I'm like, Benavidez is going to be much smaller. Well, maybe not. 49 fights. He's got 18 more than Benavidez. He's got 313 rounds as a pro, which is 146 more. He is the WBO champion, and he's listed as the WBA champion in the cruiserweight division. The Ring ranks him at number 2. ESPN ranks him at number 2, all in the cruiserweight division. He started pro. He turned pro in 2009, 4 years more than his opponent. He's 34 years old, which is 5 years older than his opponent. The height and reach is about the same at 6'2.5" and 75 inches, respectively. And Zerto is a southpaw. Now he steps in the ring with David the Monster Benavidez. He's 31-0. 25 of his wins come by knockout. He too was in the super middleweight and light heavyweight divisions. He's actually the current world light heavyweight champion for the WBC, and he's got a WBA belt. He's one of like 27 world light heavyweight champions that the WBA has. I'm sorry. He is the champion for the WBC. The Ring has him at number 2. ESPN has him at number 1, all in the light heavyweight division. He's moving up to challenge Gilberto Ramirez for his world cruiserweight titles. The Monster is 29 years old, 5 years younger than Gilberto. Ramirez, like I said, he's got 18 rounds less at 18 fights less at 31 and 146 rounds less than his opponent at 167. Now his knockout ratio is higher. He's got just about an 81% knockout ratio, which is 20% higher than Zerto Ramirez. He's 4 years less in terms of turning pro. He turned pro in 2013, and Ramirez turned pro in 2009. Like I said, the height is roughly the same. He's an orthodox fighter. Right now, he's the WBA, WBC champion, WBA and WBC light heavyweight champion. When you look at his resume, he's got some names, bros and girls and children of all ages. At super middleweight, Khalid Plant, Ronald Gravel twice, Jalen Love, Anthony Durrell, Alexis Angulo, Ronald Ellis, Kyron Davis, all at super middleweight. Then he steps in he also fought Demetrius Andrade. I'll mention that, but that wasn't a very competitive fight. But then at light heavyweight, he beats Alexander Vodzik. Also, he fought David Morrell, which was an extremely close fight. I know the scores didn't indicate it. One judge had it 118-111, and the other two saw it at 115-111, which I don't think those scores were accurate. It was a close fight. Benavidez won the fight, but it was close. And he also, in his last fight, he beat Anthony Yarde. I see the tale of two fighters here that equals one. What I mean by that, they're very similar. Their styles are similar. Their road to where they are today is similar. I think they've both improved over their last fights. I think Zerto Ramirez, he's got something to prove. One of my concerns that I talked about last week was David Benavidez is already looking ahead. He's already, wanting to fight Apatea. He wants to fight Usyk at heavyweight. The world is open to him. The world is at his feet. Yeah, well, he's got to win on Saturday first. And he's in a tough fight. He's in a fight. It could be considered like a mirror, okay, that both of these fighters, the difference is one's a southpaw and one's an orthodox. So my question is, which fighter is going to be able to adapt to his opponent better? Obviously Ramirez has more experience fighting orthodox fighters than Benavidez has fighting southpaws. I think Benavidez and Ramirez both have solid chins. I think Ramirez is slightly less talented from a boxing perspective. I think David Benavidez, although I don't really look at him as any kind of super boxer, I think he's developed into just a smidgen more of a boxer. Not that I'm saying his style is a boxer. No. I'm not saying that. But I think his boxing ability has improved a smidgen more than Ramirez. I think this fight is going to boil down to heart and determination. I really do. I think we're going to get a war. I think it's going to be an edge of your seat fight. I do not foresee any real feeling out round in this fight. Maybe the first round, half of the first round. I think we're going to see two big, strong, talented Mexican fighters going after each other. And man, I think we're going to be treated for a good fight. Now, who's going to win this fight? Well, I tell you, I've been going back and forth. My main man, okay, my main man from Riverhead, Long Island, my main man, Augie. Him and Augie Jr., we've been talking about this fight really for a long time. And, for the longest time, I've been on the fence. And then I started leaning towards Ramirez because I'm saying to myself, Benavidez is being a little cocky. He's looking ahead. He's underestimating Ramirez. Ramirez is playing, I'm the underdog role, all those things that fire fighters up. But the thing is that I have to take and look at David Benavidez potentially using his own stuff that I'm saying could be hurting him as a motivational tactic. And look what you can achieve, if we get the job done against Ramirez. Benavidez is also going into this fight theoretically he's got nothing to lose because he's not giving up his light heavyweight title. He's also said that he was going to go back down to light heavyweight, which is his way out, in my opinion. If he loses, he can just turn around and say, well, I didn't take the weight that good, so I'm going to go back down to light heavyweight, and all is good. I don't think he's going to lose any value. So I do believe that Benavidez is in a win-win situation here. And Ramirez is the guy that there's more pressure on because he's got to win. And nobody's going to be able to say, well, you beat a smaller guy, because these two guys are the same size. They're the same size. And I'm just leaning towards David Benavidez in this fight. I think David Benavidez is going to come out on top. I just have that feeling. I think it could go either way. I think it's a true 50-50 fight. But my official prediction is I'm picking David Benavidez in this one. And there's the return of Jaime Munguia on this card as well. I know it's on pay-per-view, but if you got the Zone subscription like I did, you get that part of it. So I'm looking forward to that fight. Hey, listen, I'm glad all you guys stopped in. I appreciate it. Just remember, tune in next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Until then, I'll leave you with this. Ciao, baby. Hey, don't you miss those fights. They're going to be good this week.